Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about some volumetric lighting, atmospheric lighting, in other words. Um, Filling the light, giving it more of a three-dimensional feel than the 2D dimensional feel that you can do with Maya and the Arnold render, which is really awesome. God rays, I think is a good term to call them. So I'm just going to back up here. I'm going to create a new scene. I was making a light come through the tree, so it looked pretty cool. So we've went over just creating regular lights, spotlights, some with the Arnold lights too, and got this item here. And you can do this just with regular spotlights through the Arnold render, which is actually the easiest to kind of practice on. Then you can go about adding what we call a gobo light or a gobo filter, which is kind of like adding filters with inside the lights. So just to kind of demonstrate, you've got a spotlight here. Turn it to shine on this guy here. Just a straight down view. If you open up your Arnold render now, not much is going on. Obviously, with the spotlights, you have to crank up the intensity or the exposure on them to kind of get something coming through. You're starting to get there. Kind of turn it a little bit. Really nothing happy about this. There's so much more we can add to it, and Arnold lets us do that through the atmospheric volume of the light, in other words. So I'm going to crank this up to where you can kind of got a good thing there, and there we go. So first starting out, you can add what you want to, different color lights, different colors to this, right? But I'm just going to keep it white right now so you can see it. Go to the render settings, and underneath the Arnold render to environment, you have this atmosphere right here. Click the clacker, get this AI atmospheric volume right there. Nothing seems to happen just adding it in. You'll notice it added an attribute over here that you can manipulate things, and this is where it gets fun. You'll notice your density is set at nothing, which is obviously it's just the same thing, but if you start cranking this thing up, you'll start seeing your rays come in more and more. So you can affect the color and the intonation, the anthropity. Sorry, I'm not good at saying that word. But yeah, and you can kind of mess around with those settings right there. You can go back to your spotlight and adjust the drop off, kind of feather it out a little bit more. Yeah, like that right there. Just the cone angle. Pull it up so you can't see my initial glow right there. Yeah, and this is basically what it comes to filling in those void. This will work really well when you start adding mesh lights in, because the just adding mesh lights in, we haven't really talked about that. It's creating lights out of the actual geometry itself. That's whenever they really start to pop, because if you create just a mesh light out of a piece of geometry, you'll just see a glowing thing, but whenever you cut the atmospheric volume around it, that's whenever you'll see like the illuminating glow from it. So now before I end this one, that is volumetric. If for some reason, I don't know why, it's hard to find that initial attribute, it's always been a problem of mine. I always select it and I always go to right here back in the render state, and I click this little arrow thing, and then they're back here, and then you can go and adjust your density up more if you wanted to make it more dense or not. So now that we talked about that, I want to talk about adding filters into these things because that's a great way to kind of project silhouettes. Now you'll notice in the earlier, whenever I first opened this up, I had a tree in there, and basically I just placed the light in behind the tree, so it, obviously would block the light out. You can go about that in other ways. You can add a filter to the basic spotlight itself that will project all the black images, and this will be done by adding a gobo. Now, gobo is kind of a goes before optics, meaning it's kind of a funny name. But basically, it's adding in a filter over the lens to what you're going to project. Gobo lighting, yeah, right here. Say if you wanted to project this kind of tree image right here, it just basically projects the black and then kind of filters out through the white. It's not really projecting an image, but it's basically projecting the alpha. So, and you can do this by going to your actual spot, going down here to your light filters. Go to add a gobo. And that adds another node up here to your attribute editor. And this is where you can kind of add a file in if you wanted to project a tree or a silhouette. But sometimes I just like to do noise because, this light wouldn't be perfectly, there'd be dust and all kinds of stuff if I were in a room. Certain times of the day you can see the dust in a room kind of coming through the window. So noise is really good for that. Now you can sort of see like it's projecting the noise out, basically. Not projecting the noise, it's projecting the alpha channels of the noise that you can go in through here and adjust. So I'm going to turn the amplitude down a little bit. Turn my threshold up. So it kind of barely really now, depending on how well your monitor, and this is still rendering, depending on how well your monitor's coming through, you can see now the discrepancies of the light coming through, which makes it more realistic and more eye-pleasing. Just waiting on it to render. There we go. Yeah, you can see the lines kind of coming through. I don't know if you can really see that on your laptop with this video, but they're there, and you can kind of go and adjust and play with them to your likings, in other words. If you don't like the filter of that one, I just wanted to show you the other filters real quick too. Go back to your spotlight. You can disconnect this one, kind of deletes it. These other ones right here, you can explore. This is barn door. It's kind of like a blocked door, but the light blockers one you may see more often, and that's pretty handy if you want to make like a noir type shot or something like that without the volumetric. You can do this without the volumetric lighting too. Add this in. So what that does is it adds a piece of, not geometry, but like a locked image there that you can go up to your transform. And you can adjust this thing how you want to. It's either a sphere. I'm kind of scooting closer so you can kind of see it. To go back to a box. Write this down here. My density. So now you see I'm starting to block out the light coming through there. It's handy for certain things. It doesn't add geometry in, which is really nice. Turn this to different. I'm going to crank it up to 3. Yeah, but they're fun to play with. If you've got something kind of you just want like plane will basically knock out. Yeah. starts to move. Now you can kind of see how the light's being blocked away from this plane here. It's just taking a while to render out. So I'm going to go back to my spotlight real quick and show you how, without the volumetric, how you can still use a gobo filter, but it doesn't really look as good, I think. So I'm going to disconnect that, and I'm just going to delete this. So if I wanted to go back and add the gobo light, put a noise on it. If I go into my render settings and I want to get rid of the volumetric lighting on here, it's still going to project the noise as the shadow. So it just doesn't look as good. It's kind of like when we first added images to the spotlight as a file. This is actually doing it kind of the right way in the Arnold style to kind of get it with the Arnold look to it. And but yeah, so that is volumetric lighting, atmospheric lighting, really handy. When we talk about mesh lightings and IES lights, that's whenever you'll really start to see how it affects those certain lights coming in and make them look more photorealistic, you know. So, okay, well, thanks for watching.